And welcome back, everyone, to the Beyond the Profile podcast. I'm your host, Shiny, and today on the show we have a wonderful guest for episode 9. She's someone I went to middle school and high school with, and we go into really just a ton of details on how she founded her own business. It's a one-person company where she creates artistic and extravagant cakes for people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we go into so many different details on really how she founded that business and what she's learned along the way, and so much more. So I know for a fact that you guys will love this interview. There's just so much insight on how she's founded this business and how she's created a social media following behind it. But I just wanted to take some time real quick to hit on a couple things that happened last week in DC. And for people that don't know, I live in DC. I've been living here for 10 years now, including school. And what happened last Wednesday in terms of the insurrection on the Capitol was obviously something we've never seen before in our lives. But it was just extremely gut-wrenching and chilling and made me sick. And I'll give you some reasons as to why to that. And I just want to be... I'm not going to harp on the things that, you've seen in the news, or, I'm not coming at it from a reporter or journalist point of view and stuff like that. I just want to give you guys this information as just a DC resident. To start things off, Wednesday evening, after everything had happened and, we were kind of glued to the TV, we live near a number of parking lots where it's a 10 to 15 minute walk away from the Capitol. And DC is very hard to park, if you don't know. So a lot of these, quote unquote protesters, what they do is they park in these parking lots and then they walk over. And we saw someone get shot, outside of our window. They were about a block away. People started scattering everywhere. Ambulances, police cars came up. Thank God the woman's okay. But then the next day I went on a mid-afternoon walk, and I was 2 blocks away from home, so close to being home, and a mother and her son came up to me. The mother was not wearing a mask, the son was, and they just looked confused. I thought they were going to ask for directions. They clearly didn't look like they were from around here, because if you know DC, everyone in DC wears a mask. That's just what you do. A lot of people walking around close together. It's just the respectful thing to do. So I thought she was going to ask for directions. I take out my headphones, and she asks me a genuine question. And that question was, why do people wear masks even when you're outside? So I engaged. I told her truthfully, you wear a mask outside because it's the respectful thing to do. Everyone is walking around. You want to be respectful to everyone around you. I know that the percentages are lower if you're outside, but, to me, it doesn't matter. Like, there's still a percentage chance. And, I'm not going to take that risk, and I think that's the respectful, proper thing to do. She claps back a little bit, and it ends up being a 25-30 minute conversation. And when I mean conversation, it's not, like a polite, nice convo where we're hashing things out. I'm understanding where she's coming from. No. It ends up turning, to be yelling here and there, screaming. And... she brought up things like BLM and Antifa were behind the riots and the fires and the looting that occurred in different communities over the summertime. And I responded back to her, look, I don't believe that, but I'm against looting, and destruction and vandalism and all that stuff. And which she clearly was. But then I went back at her. I said, hey, so you were clearly there yesterday on Wednesday during the march. Were you against what happened at the Capitol? And she responded back to me, no, that was necessary. And my eyes just widen, my jaw drops. And I'm kind of in like a state of semi-shock. I guess I just had never spoken to someone like that had those views that were so one-sided, where they're clearly being hypocritical, clearly, but they just don't realize it. They don't notice it. And when you listen to someone who is believing all of these conspiracy theories and taking it as facts, it's just scary. And the worst part about it is her son's right there. That was just the saddest thing of all. Her son was right there listening to everything. And we went back and forth on different issues and policies and what I, believed in, what she believed in, and a lot of it was conspiracy theories. And you read it in the news, you hear about it, but until you actually speak to someone that truly believes it, and you could see it in their eyes, it is frightening. Especially when her son is right there. So, what I did was, at the end of the conversation, I turned to the son and I said, hey, buddy, just in the future, I want you to question everything your mom says regarding to politics. Question everything. And I end up walking away. Now, that makes it sound much better than it actually was. There was a lot of, no, you're crazy. She called me a leftist socialist. I called her ma'am. Where do you get your facts from? Things like that. Then, if you want me to elaborate on, I will. But for right now, I just want you guys to take this story, take it in a little bit, and, just make sure you're checking your news sources. Make sure that you're double checking facts and making sure that it's true. We live in a very fast social media world where information comes so quickly. And, you just want to make sure that you're getting everything correct. And obviously, everyone is, can have their own opinions, obviously. But, just make sure you read the facts. And that's what I want to get out of it. And, better days are ahead, thank God. And just wanted you guys to, have that little snippet. But without further ado, want you guys to enjoy this interview. Much better days are ahead in America, in our world, and much better things are ahead with this podcast. So, without further ado, let's get into it with this interview. Let's get after it. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Today, I'm joined on the show by a good friend, an incredible baker who is well known in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for creating the most artistic and extravagant cakes. She's the founder of Goodies Cakery and has been featured in Cosmopolitan, BuzzFeed, D Magazine, and Yahoo Life as one of the best food Instagram accounts to follow based on your cravings. That guest today is Dani Goodman. Dani, thanks for joining the show.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, there's just so much that I want to get into because we've known each other for a very long time. But why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, went to college, etc.?
Yeah, so I grew up here in Dallas, Texas. I went to Green Hill for kindergarten through 12th grade with you for most of that. And then when I graduated, I went up north to University of Michigan, where I spent 4 years there and graduated with a degree in communications. And then right after that, I moved back to Dallas, where I had a job set up for that summer at a digital marketing firm. And I stayed there for about 3 years and started baking during that time, and then left that job to do baking full time. And I've been doing that for about 4 years now.
Yeah, and the way you describe all of this, it just sounds so seamless. Like it was part of the plan the entire time. So I want to get into really where did you find that love for cooking cakes? Where did that come from? Where did it start? Et
Yeah,
cetera?
so I've kind of, I guess I've baked my whole life, with my mom and my grandma around Christmas time, or, for clubs and sports games at school and stuff like that. But I don't think it was out of the ordinary. Like, no one would have ever said, she's going to grow up and be a cake company owner one day. But I've always had a really big sweet tooth, and that kind of really escalated when I was a senior at the University of Michigan. I really started to get into those food trends that were happening right around that time, where people were really getting creative and experimenting with different foods and desserts, and we didn't really have access to that in Ann Arbor. So I got really into it right around there, and that's where I kind of started making fun desserts, and then kind of continued that when I moved back to Dallas, when it ended up turning into cakes eventually.
Nice. And did you experiment with your friends and such? What was it really just cakes to begin with, and then you moved on to the extravagant artistic cakes? Or how did that kind of route come about?
Yeah, so I guess I really didn't start with cakes at first. I think I would make cakes for friends for birthdays, but when I was trying to really experiment and get creative, it was more like concoctions. So like I'm trying to think, some in college, like funfetti pancakes before those were really commonplace. They're like the cronut, the croissant donut mix. So more of those like funky food desserts that weren't necessarily cakes. And then it kind of started getting more into cakes when I started my job, where I'd make cakes for the office instead of those things that really had to be eaten right at the time. So yeah, it was more like funky little bites, a lot of breakfast stuff and ice cream stuff before it really got into the cake stuff.
So honestly, it kind of sounds like you were a hot commodity in terms of being a roommate. So I mean,
Yeah,
just
it's
making
a
all these awesome
love-hate.
things.
Definitely a love-hate relationship, and I get some glares coming back from the gym from some of my roommates. But I learned that if I left what I made out, it wouldn't be eaten. But if I broke it up into pieces where people would grab it as I walked by, it'd be
Nice.
gone in like
Okay.
an hour. So that was my tactic for getting people to indulge a little bit.
That's awesome. And when you were in Michigan and you were making these different bites and cakes and desserts for your friends, did you ever think to yourself like, wow, I could actually do something like this for a living, or was it just a hobby at that point?
Yeah, it was really just a hobby. I'm always looking for new projects. So like even now, I'll craft and bake and do little fun things, but never thought it would turn into a career. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it seems like, just doing a little bit of research and also just knowing who you are, you went into digital marketing right after school. Was that something that you always wanted to do? And you kind of turned that seamlessly into the cake business that you have right now, where you're implementing those digital marketing skills, social media, things like that. So that 2-year frame that you were there, how much did you learn, and what did you really learn to take that into Goody's Cakery?
Yeah. So I guess it wasn't always my plan. Going into college, I started with psych classes because I thought that's what I was going to be doing. I wanted to be a psychiatrist originally, and quickly changed majors on that one after Psych 101. But I learned a ton. What I did basically throughout college was intern with PR and marketing agencies. So I got kind of a glimpse into PR, a glimpse into marketing. I did one summer doing specifically social media, and that's kind of where I honed in on that as my career path. So yeah, I learned. I mean, what I do on a daily basis now with my Instagram and website and blogs and all that stuff, I really picked up while I was there. So it was really helpful going into starting my own company, what I learned there, and the connections. I mean, just alone of people that you meet and clients that turned into clients at my new cake company. So it was really helpful being there.
Yeah, of course. And what was kind of that moment that you realized, okay, I can actually turn this cake business into a full-time living and I can quit my digital marketing job?
Yeah, so I guess I really, really loved the people I was working with. So even as I was taking orders as a side hustle, I was really never considering leaving full time because I just never wanted to leave the culture and the company that I was at. It was a really amazing place to be. So there was one day when I had a meeting with our whole company, and we were told that we were about to be bought out and merge into one big company. And what I loved so much about where I was like I said, the culture, and there were so few of us, and we were like family. So I just knew, like deep down, that everything was going to change from that point on. And it was like I like remember right after the meeting going into the bathroom and like needing to breathe because I
Oh my God.
was like overwhelming feeling of like
Mhm.
it's now or never. If I, stay here and like merge into this new company and move to the new building we were going to, I'd probably stay there for, the rest of my life. And it was like the perfect gap to leave and start my own thing. So that was the day I decided pretty much it wasn't like this long plan really. It was kind of that day where things started really getting put into motion.
Yeah, and did you have any pros and cons lists that you went through? Did you have any mentors or people that you spoke to about this? Because again, like you're speaking as it's just so seamless, and you always had this thought in your head, and you just went right into it afterwards. But I'm sure you had some sort of counsel or I don't know.
Yeah. So going into it, it wasn't as like seamless as it sounds. So like approaching like that moment, I decided. I mean, I was like making cakes all night and all morning, before and after work and on weekends. So it was something where it was like really building and growing, and it was exhausting to be honest. So it wasn't just like all of a sudden I just switched. It was like a really long process of doing both at the same time, where I wasn't really thinking through the next steps necessarily. But that day, yeah, I mean, I made a list of all the different ways that if I left my job, I could financially support myself. So, like, obviously, number one was cakes, but I also was gonna, make toppers and sell them on Etsy. I was gonna drive Uber when during my free time. Like, I had all these plans of different. I was selling these little like deer antlers that I was painting, and so I
Oh
was like,
my
"I'm
God.
gonna start selling more of those." So I had all these plans of ways to support myself financially along with the cake so that I wasn't just, like, floundering out there trying to make, my ends meet, but quickly, all of that went away because pretty much by the first week that I had left my job, I was booked for the week, so
Oh,
it
really?
so I had given myself, I'd given the company a month's notice, just because I wanted to give them time to let me train someone and prepare since it was such like a hectic time at the company. I didn't want to leave them high and dry. So I had that month of planning ahead for the day that I would be on my own. So I just kept booking cakes. And up until that point, I was having to turn down a lot of business for cakes. So I knew the demand was there, and I knew like my passion for it was there. So those were really big factors in making that decision. And then I would say like the guidance I got was really from my dad. He's the original hustler of the family. So it was really important for me to get his approval. So I called him the day that I decided all of this, like really suddenly. So there wasn't a lot of guidance or advice leading up to it because, like I said, it wasn't something I even knew I was doing until that day. But yeah, I kind of like got home with my list. I didn't go into my house. I was walking around the street on the phone with my dad, explaining how I was going to do this. And he's like my number one supporter. So I don't know why I was having to like explain how I was going to make it happen because like he believed in me no matter what. But
Yeah.
I guess I really just wanted his validation. So he said, you can do it. You got this. Do what you want to do, and you'll make it work and make it happen. So that's kind of my decision making right there.
No, and that's amazing. I mean, not only did you have someone that was, on your side, on your team to counsel you through all this, but you seem to be an extremely organized person where you had these side hustles lined up to, essentially make ends meet and put yourself in a financial situation where you can get things done and get through these things. And the fact that it only lasted a week, how many cakes were you rolling out while you were still working, just after a week to be fully booked up?
It's a really good question. I don't know the exact amount because it feels like forever ago.
Mm-hmm.
From the day I started making cakes, also my dad, who guided me, as a lawyer, so he pretty much told me, like, set this up as a legitimate business because if anything happens, we want to be protected. So from the day I started selling cakes, I was putting everything into a separate account and just not touching it. So all that was saved up, ready to go for the day that I started my business. So I had a pretty good amount to start off with, like, to get things rolling, get all the equipment I needed, get the licenses and food safety, like, exams I needed. So I was probably making, like, I want to say, like, 40 cakes a month maybe.
Oh my God.
When I was working my full-time job, yeah.
Wow. And for the listeners, when I tag you and put you on Instagram and they know who I'm speaking to, they'll see those cakes that you kind of put out there, and they're just incredible cakes. They are multi-layered cakes with, donuts or ice cream cones or, like, pictures of Drake on them, like whatever that may be. When give us a little behind the scenes of how you make one of these elaborate cakes.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you scroll back to the beginning, they're not as amazing as maybe they are now. It was definitely not, they were not picture perfect when I first started out. And I like to remind my followers of that by doing, like, a side-by-side of a design that I redid recently, just so people know that I didn't just, like, start making cakes like that. It takes a lot of practice. But for going behind the scenes of making a cake, I guess it just starts with the form on my website where I get kind of basic information from customers. I get just the sizing and flavors and all that down, and then there's a spot for them to tell me exactly what they're looking for in a cake. So at this point, I've posted, like, so many that a lot of times people will just send an exact cake that they want off my Instagram or website or whatever it might be. The other way of doing it is people will send me a list of things they like, favorite colors or TV shows, sports teams, whatever it might be. And then I'll go through and create a design for them to send back for approval. And sometimes we're good to go right from there. And sometimes there'll be, a bit of back and forth from the customer just to make sure they get exactly what they want on the cake. And there is a lot of, like, expectation setting where sometimes people will send me crazy ideas that just aren't physically possible, with, like, Barbies
Really?
upside down on, like, a stripper pole or something like
Oh
that.
my God.
But so there's some of that expectation setting of just, like, logistically what's possible. But yeah, that's pretty much the process of how we finalize our design.
That's hilarious, because there are some cakes where I just think to myself, like, I feel like you're defying gravity on some of these cakes. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me that you're doing this, but I mean, clearly you do. And, we brought up the fact that you're just so organized, and the fact that you were putting together all of these things when you first got started, but you are a one-person company, and you do the cooking, the designing, the delivery, the digital marketing, social media, all of that stuff. You talked about how you just put together a cake. What is your day structured like, or what is a week structured like in this one-person company?
It's pretty different every day, just because sometimes weekends are a lot busier than others. But typically, overall, I basically start off my Monday trying to limit orders for the day just so I can get caught up on all my emails for the weekend. That's definitely one of my biggest sore spots, is staying up on my emails, just because I get so many with designing cakes or new orders or just basic questions. So I try to do most of, like, my computer and admin work on Mondays and really get ahead for the week on that. And that's kind of also the day where I make sure I have all the toppers and ingredients and everything I need for the week. I definitely kind of try to look at it week by week so it doesn't get too overwhelming. But I'll make a few cakes that day and then start ramping up for the weekend. I'll pretty much go into the bakery, maybe knock out a few emails in the morning, and get home and do emails most of the night while I watch my TV shows. And then once we get to Thursday through about Sunday, I'm pretty much in the bakery all day, coming home at night and answering emails and then getting ready for the next day until start over on Monday with more
Wow.
emails.
I mean, it just sounds like a 24 hour, 7-day a week business right there.
Yeah.
So, and it's also incredible too, because on your website, it says that you only deliver in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Is that still a thing? Are you looking to kind of branch out and expand a little bit? You know, what's the thought process looking like for the business, and what are those goals that you kind of see for yourself?
Yeah, so right now, definitely still in Dallas only. I don't think there's really a way to ship cakes as they are in my current operations, just because they would probably end up in like a mushy mess by the time they got somewhere. But I've had people come from Austin actually to like get cakes, so people will drive a little bit, and I've had people take cakes on planes without telling me.
What?
I'll find out after the fact when they tag me in
No
a
way.
picture. But yeah, right now it's just Dallas local, like keeps me pretty busy. People here will pretty much find an excuse to celebrate anything. So, there's always a reason for cake here in Dallas with my customers. So there are some things I'm looking at that I might be able to ship one day, but it's probably a little bit further down the line. And I'm kind of at the crossroads right now of figuring out the next step of whether it's going to continue, just me doing custom cakes because it's something that I love, or whether it's something I want to grow and maybe find like a storefront or, whatever that might be. There's a lot of different directions that I can go right now. Just being a one-person show, there's a lot of room for me to pivot or grow or whatever it might be next. So that's a good question. That's kind of the question I'm at right now also.
No, definitely. I mean, it's got to be a bit flattering too that people have taken cakes on planes and then tagged you in it. I mean, we can only hope. We cross our fingers that one day, maybe DC, that you'll be able to ship. So, or I might just grab one and take it on the plane like that other person.
Yeah, there you go.
But another thing that I wanted to, ask you and kind of go a little bit further on was, I mean, you're clearly passionate and you clearly seem happy about the work that you're doing, that you jumped in and took a risk in this type of a business. And, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you're passionate about, not only just making cakes, but you just have this artistic side of you and that you just love and want to show the world, it seems like. I mean, we were just talking before this episode, your room is just so organized and candy everywhere and like stuff like that, and like so many different colors and stuff like that. So, what have you learned these last 5 or so years working for yourself, running your own business just with Goodies Cakery?
I've learned a ton. I mean, starting from the beginning with the whole business side of things, I just spent like days and weeks Googling everything I needed to know in terms of like taxes and licensing and, all of that stuff.
The boring stuff.
Yeah, so definitely learned a ton of that, and still to this day, and learning all of that, the ins and outs of running a business. In terms of maybe like a personal level of the business, it's really important. I know I talked about my week and how it sounds like I'm working all the time, but something I've definitely learned, especially in the last few years, is just trying to find that work-life balance and the importance of that, because like no matter how passionate you are about what you're doing, it's really important to just take a breather every now and then, because you'll burn out before you could even, reach your full potential if you don't.
I love that.
So just finding that time, on a Saturday, maybe I close early and just take the day off and turn off my emails and, spend time with my family. So that's definitely one of the more important things I've been learning to navigate, sometimes not so successfully yet, but definitely working on. Organization, like you said, is so important, especially with, how detailed some of these orders can get and doing so many a day. Just keeping everything super organized. I've always been that way, luckily, but making lists of lists on and on just to make sure everything's in order. I guess the other like main thing that was a learning process for me coming out of, being in school my whole life and then straight into a corporate job, is just managing your own work. It's a pretty different shift to be in charge of your schedule, and it's so easy to let a day or days go by where you just, put off whatever you need to do. So just finding that motivation within you to, wake up early, start your own schedule, and get to work when you could easily just put it off and watch TV or do whatever you want all day instead.
Yeah. No, definitely. And there are days and there, people are, we're all human, and there are going to be days when we procrastinate and we put things off. But it sounds like, with you being so organized and having that structure and knowing that you need to get things done for your clients. I mean, you mentioned earlier that you have emails galore just right when you get up on a Monday morning. So it's not like you have time for that, but carving out that time, like you said, even though you could be so passionate about something, carving out that, Dani time to just like relax and take a breather is extremely pivotal of having your own business. Kind of going off that a little bit, and you kind of hit it on the nose too, but is there any other advice that you would give someone starting their own small business?
I just love the idea of like this culture of a side hustle. I feel like it's been pretty recent. Maybe it's been going on forever, but just like the term side hustle, I feel like has become super popular. I just love that idea of having that time where you're secure in your job, or maybe, you're looking to make some extra funds on the side with your side hustle or whatever it might be. But just having that time to see if it's something that you're really passionate about, where it's something that's sustainable long term. Like I said, if you're not passionate about it and you're not going to be excited to wake up sometimes at like 4 a.m. or whatever it might be, then, it's not something maybe you should be leaving your job for. So I think if you have the opportunity to work full time and start what you're passionate about on the side and have that grace period of like still making money, building a business, getting ready to make that jump from your career to doing what you love full time, it's not such a big jump as just like taking that crazy leap of faith where like you have something waiting for you on the other side ready to go. So, I mean, I know everyone's circumstances are different, but I just feel like if you can have that opportunity, it's so important and such a great way to start a business that you feel really good and confident about doing.
No, I love that too. And that's kind of what I want to get out of this podcast too. It's just interviewing people and getting those different career journeys on how they found that happiness and passion in whatever career that they're in. And I was actually thinking the other day, because I'm sure just like everyone else, like I love chilling and watching Netflix. And I was just thinking to myself, like, what if I had a career that equated the amount of happiness that I have watching Netflix? Like, is that even possible? And, maybe it's not, but trying to decrease that variance so much where it's so, there's not that much of a difference would just make a huge amount of difference for me at the end of the day. And that's kind of what you were saying about waking up at 4 a.m. But,
I also get that added benefit of like, as opposed to someone who might make a product and ship it somewhere or like have some sort of service, I get the benefit of seeing someone pick up a cake and like feel that joy and happiness where you can really feel what you're doing make an impact. So that definitely is something that keeps me motivated and going. Even more than just doing something I love is like getting that feedback and excitement from people where like you might not get it if you're sending someone like something that you created in your room and never hearing again. So I love that part. And then also being able to see, people use social media so much afterwards, like, and then getting that extra reinforcement of like everyone like getting so excited and posting and commenting. And so those two things like definitely make it even more fun to go on every day.
And I didn't even really think about it until you just brought it up, but cakes are such a celebratory product. And the fact that you can give someone that with this incredible design and artistic, way about it. And then you see their face when they get it, or you get the tag, maybe it's for their birthday, friend's birthday, their daughter's birthday. I mean, that must just give you like all the joy in the world when you see something like that.
It's really rewarding, definitely.
That's wonderful. Well, Dani, I want to thank you. I just have a list of like 3 or 4 final questions that I ask everyone else, but I want to acknowledge you real quick and, thank you for taking the time for doing all of this. You're someone that I've known for a very long time, and the fact that you're just so diligent, you know what you want to do, and you're probably one of the more organized people I've ever met as well. So, you put your heart into something and you really go full force into it. So I want to acknowledge you on that. But final questions here that I ask all my guests. Looking back on your freshman year of college self, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, like I said, I was really focused on psych. I think at the time I would have loved to, even throughout my college career, maybe taken a few business classes and gotten some of that knowledge under my belt. Maybe a few less like alien classes that I took. Maybe throw another business class in there. But yeah, I think where I ended up is definitely in part to what I did throughout college, regardless of what it was. If it was, my communications versus where I ended up baking, so not that much different. But I think a business class or two would have been nice.
Yeah, well, I mean, nothing wrong with a couple alien classes. Okay. You're really into that stuff.
They're great for party tricks.
Yeah, there you go. What was the worst advice you ever took and executed on it?
It wasn't advice given directly to me, but I think something you hear a lot from, really successful entrepreneurs sometimes is that idea of like say yes and then figure it out later. So I guess I did that a few times starting out. I think it's definitely useful in certain contexts. Like for me specifically, if someone orders a crazy amount of cakes and it's something I feel like I might not be able to take on, and just figuring it out, that's kind of different than saying yes to something that I'm not able to execute in terms of like a design or, if it's just something that I know is not going to be my best quality and I don't want to represent my company, it's not worth saying yes to if you're not going to be able to execute on it. So that's one piece of advice that I think is kind of, take it with a grain of salt, where maybe I set myself up for failure early on for something like designs or cakes that like I maybe shouldn't have been doing, and, might have lost a customer from that first time, that first year of doing business. So I've just learned, since then to kind of set expectations, like I said, in terms of like logistics, not saying yes to everything, because I can't physically do it all. And sometimes it's not going to be what I'll be proud to give to someone. So.
Yeah, no, and that's all about the bandwidth and quality that you put into those cakes. And if you just have so many, people asking for all these things and you say yes, quality might diminish a little bit because of it. So that definitely makes sense. What do you do to sharpen your sword and refine your craft?
I love following bakers that really inspire me online. I take a lot of people nowadays, especially because of the pandemic, are offering some awesome online classes. So I took like a buttercream flour making class recently.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of great resources online just to keep learning, and they're so easy to do just from your couch. So I love, being inspired by other people I see doing really creative, amazing stuff in our space. And then just trying out new techniques. It's something I usually do on like cakes where I'm making it for a family or for myself or whatever it might be, where there's not that pressure and I get to kind of just have fun and be creative, and fine tune those skills where there's not someone who is paying for it at that moment to make sure it's something I can do in the future.
That's awesome. And I'm going to add in another question here, but what is your favorite cake you've made for someone? Because I've seen so many on your Instagram. I want to know what the best one you've made you think.
The most excited, this wouldn't be my favorite design exactly, but the most excited I've ever been about a cake was a little girl, I think she was like 6 or 7 maybe, um, drew the cake design that she wanted for her birthday, and it was, like, really adorable with puppies and, rainbows and everything like that, and, like, have you ever seen those stuffed animals where they take kids' drawings and turn them into stuffed animals, and they're all, like,
Yeah.
wonky? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so it was kind of like that, but I was able to make her drawing into a cake, and it
I
was
think-
pretty much, like, spot on in terms. She had it down, like, the logistics of it, so it was really exciting to see her reaction to that, and, like, she was just, like, thrilled to have this cake that she designed all on her own, so
Oh my God, that's
I'm
amazing.
most excited about that one.
I love that answer. All right, Dani. Well, thank you so much. Last thing, where can people find you? Social media, your website?
I'm Goodies Cakery everywhere, so goodiescakery.com for my website, and then Goodies Cakery on Instagram, and I think I have a Twitter, but it's not worth following me on there because I'll never tweet.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, she's a great follow on Instagram. So
Yeah,
everyone can do that.
Instagram is my main game, so
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dani. This was wonderful.
yeah, thanks for having me, Michael.
All right. Thank you again to Dani for taking the time to chat with me on this episode of Beyond the Profile. There's a lot of great insight on how she developed her business and the path forward to, moving from working at a larger company to developing her own business. And, right now it's a one-person business and seeing where she's going to take that in the future. It's all really exciting. So I thank her for that. Please follow her at Goodies Cakery on all mediums. Her website is goodiescakery.com. You can follow us at Beyond the Profile on all social platforms. And please subscribe, rate, and review to our podcast, wherever you find our podcast, at Beyond the Profile. Looking forward to hearing from you guys, and hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Much love.